crisis of the young and jobless is deepening. More than 73 million young people are unemployed around the world, and the predictions are the numbers are set to rise. In November and December, across the BBC, we'll be hearing the stories behind the numbers. We'll meet the young and jobless and those trying to get them into work.
Welcome back to Global, I'm John Sopel. Now, in December 2010, Mohamed Bouazizi became famous throughout Tunisia and the rest of the Arab world. The 26-year-old market seller set himself on fire to draw attention to his country's economic hardship and repression. His actions became the catalyst for a wave of protests that not only brought down President Ben Ali, but inspired similar uprisings in Egypt, Libya and Yemen. While Tunisia has fared better than other countries, there are still concerns about where it's headed. Well, today hundreds gathered to protest at what little progress has been made. Our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucet, has been visiting the capital, Tunis.
It's the song that's gone viral in Tunisia, Khomeini. Everyone knows the words on this university campus. We live like trash in a garbage can, the lyric goes. The rapper Hamzawi filmed his video in Ariana, a poor suburb of Tunis. Life is hard, jobs are scarce, but people help each other just to get by.
We dreamt about the revolution. Well, I call it a fake dream. I thought Tunis will be like Copenhagen or Amsterdam, but it remains the same.
There is more freedom now to speak out, although some rappers have gone to prison for insulting the authorities. But after their revolution, Tunisians refuse to stay silent.
3 years on, the protesters are still out on the streets of Tunis, and so are the riot police, and they're still shouting "dégage." In French, that means leave. That's what they shouted to President Ben Ali's regime, and they're shouting at the leaders now too, as the struggle for greater democracy goes on.
The old police state is still largely intact, and there are new security fears after attacks blamed on radical Salafist groups. Ennahda has betrayed Tunisia, they shout, referring to the government dominated by the moderate Islamic Party.
Do you worry you've let people down?
People have high expectations. We didn't answer all those expectations, but we are working on bringing about democracy. We're on the last phase on moving towards free, fair elections and a democratic constitution.
What is your greatest fear now for Tunisia?
I'm afraid Tunisians will become so disappointed with their politicians that their desire for security will be greater than their hope in democracy, and so they might turn to the military and ask them for security.
Ennahda has shown itself willing to share power with secular parties. Some just pulled out of a national dialogue. But this isn't Egypt, where the ruling Islamic Party was forcibly ousted. Tunisia prides itself on its tolerant culture. But if politicians don't tackle these mounting worries, the nation regarded as the last hope for the Arab Spring could also lose its way. Lise Doucet, BBC News, Tunis.
So where does this leave political Islam? Well, with me to discuss this issue, Norman Bedotman from the Quilliam Foundation. He describes himself as a former jihadi who now embraces secularism. Also, Dr. Azzam Tamimi, a writer on the Muslim Brotherhood and lecturer on issues related to Islamic political thought and Middle East politics. And welcome to you both. Dr. Azzam Tamimi, first of all, can political Islam work alongside democracy?
I'm really surprised that this question is still being asked when the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood are behind bars today because they defended democracy. The Islamists, or political Islam as some people prefer to refer to, are actually the spearhead in the struggle for democracy today. They are the real democrats, because the liberals and the secularists in the Arab world, in both the cases, that the video earlier referred to, Tunisia and Egypt, have actually rallied against democracy because they did not win in a fair election.
Would you agree with that?
First of all, I'm not a secularist, and I don't, promote any particular ideology.
Okay.
I believe in like universal values, and I'm pro-democratic.
Okay, fine, fair point. So go on to the substantive now.
Yeah, it's I think it's the framework itself. How it's been set up. To debate the issue or to talk about it. I think it's kind of like too academic. It has been detached from reality because it's, I think, very complicated, the situation there in the Middle East, rather to talk about political Islam versus democracy, because we have a problem. Most of the well-known political Islam representative, if you talk about like the Muslim Brotherhood school of thought, they engaged in the political process, and we have Tunisia as a very good model, when Ennahda, so far they appear very pragmatic and they're willing to deal with the other groups, they are in business.
What about the point that Dr. Tamimi just made, which is that it is actually the Islamists who are the real Democrats?
No, I think here we need to be very careful because we have many different groups or Islamists, because if I ask about Al-Qaeda or even Ansar Sharia in Tunisia, they are ultra, like extremist groups, and they don't believe even in Ennahda itself as an Islamist group. So that's my point. I think this is the real debate. It's about, to what extent, we have a real pro-democratic blocs, working to establish new reality in the Middle East versus very autocratic religious groups. Okay, that's the issue because we have it now in Yemen, Libya, Tunisia, in Egypt, as well. So here, I think, we might find ourselves dealing in a very difficult situation when it comes to the Muslim Brotherhood, because they win the election in a fair way, in Egypt, and they're being forced out.
Do you think that political Islam has, you say that they are the Democrats. Having looked at what has happened in Egypt, where there were, broadly speaking, free and fair elections, and now the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood finds himself behind bars, will lead to people thinking, well, the democratic route is not for us. Frankly, we'll seize power if we can.
Well, there are some people who probably think along these lines, but not the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood maintain that the struggle for democracy should remain peaceful, and this is the only way to restore the political process in Egypt. But you see, it is worth noting here that in as much as the Arab Spring dealt a major blow to despotic regimes in the region, it also dealt a blow to extremist marginal groups who have now been revived by the coup in Egypt. They've been revived because now they are the ones who are saying, oh, see, democracy doesn't work. We shouldn't have gone down that route.
We've got very little time left. Has the Arab Spring, 3 years on, turned out to be a disappointment? If you look at what is the state of political stability in Libya, in Egypt, in all the other places we've talked about.
Not really. It's the liberals and the secularists in the Arab world who have turned to be a disappointment because they went and rallied and united with the army against democracy.
No, I think most of them, I disagree with my friend Dr. Azzam, like to label only the liberals and the secularists, as, they appear as disappointed, stakeholders or players. I think all of them. You know why? Because the issue, it has to do with the governance, I'm not aware of any particular group involved in the post-Arab Spring, 5 countries we talk about here, including Syria and Yemen. Syria tend to be like a different issue. They come up with the right model, can really attach to the hopes and the expectation of the people when we start the Arab Spring, because it starts about democracy, freedom, has no religious or ideological ties whatsoever. So all of them, I think they disappointed the public opinion, regardless of their background. You know why? Because of their ideology.
Okay. There we have to leave it. Both of you, thank you very much indeed for being in the studio with us. A lot more still to come on Global, particularly about the announcement from Japan that they're going to be increasing their defence spending. Do stay with us.